By late afternoon, the rain had completely rewritten the map of eastern Spain. What started as just a steady downpour quickly turned into a high-stakes test for towns that were already vulnerable to sudden flooding. The water was simply pouring in faster than the streets or the drainage systems could handle. Across the Valencia region and the surrounding areas, residents watched their familiar landmarks disappear beneath muddy runoff, while emergency alerts started pulsing through their phones and radios. This wasn't the kind of storm defined by roaring winds or dramatic lightning strikes. The danger here came from the sheer volume of the water and its endurance. Hour after hour, the rain just kept accumulating, feeding the ravines and channels that cut directly through urban neighborhoods. Roads buckled, tunnels filled up, and access points vanished with almost no warning. For emergency officials, the challenge wasn't just reacting to a single crisis. It was managing a chain of rapidly unfolding risks. Families packed up, ready to leave if they had to. Crews monitored water levels minute by minute, and for a tense stretch of the evening, nobody could say for sure whether the situation would stabilize or spiral into something far worse. Events like this expose a quiet truth about extreme weather. Disaster doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it builds patiently, drop by drop, until our everyday systems finally reach their breaking point. What unfolded over these hours was a stark reminder that modern communities often stand much closer to the edge than they realize when the rain refuses to stop. As the measurements started coming in, the scope of this event became impossible to ignore. Rainfall totals climbed rapidly across multiple towns. We're talking about inches of rain dumping down within a single day, amounts that typically take weeks to accumulate. This concentration of precipitation pushed both natural and man-made systems way past their design limits, leaving very little room for error. What set this storm apart wasn't just the total amount of rain that fell, but how quickly it arrived. The downpours remained intense for hours, completely saturating the soil and forcing all that excess water to run straight into the streets, underpasses, and drainage channels. Ravines that usually sit quiet for most of the year filled up aggressively. They transformed into fast-moving corridors, carrying water and debris right toward populated areas. The urban landscape actually made the problem worse. Pavement and compacted ground prevented the water from absorbing, turning entire neighborhoods into runoff zones. Intersections flooded first, followed by residential streets where the water spread out laterally, trapping vehicles and isolating blocks in several areas. Standing water got deeper in a matter of minutes, catching residents and drivers completely off guard. Meteorologists described the system as a high-impact Mediterranean rain event, a storm capable of delivering extreme precipitation over very small geographic areas. These storms are particularly dangerous because they leave almost no time for preparation and produce highly uneven impacts. One town might see manageable conditions, while a neighboring community faces catastrophic flooding. By mid-afternoon, emergency managers shifted their focus from prediction to containment. The concern was no longer whether the systems could cope, but how long they could hold before the next surge arrived. At that point, the storm wasn't just weather anymore. It had become a test of endurance for everything beneath it. By early evening, the storm's impact was no longer being measured by radar or rainfall charts. It was visible in living rooms, storefronts, and stairwells. Floodwater spilled beyond the drainage channels and ravines, pushing into residential areas where daily life was suddenly interrupted. Streets turned into shallow currents, and parked cars sat partially submerged as the water moved with little direction or warning. In several towns, local authorities initiated targeted evacuations, focusing on the neighborhoods closest to the fast-rising channels and low-lying zones. For many residents, the decision to leave had to come quickly. Essential items were gathered, doors were locked, and families stepped out into the rain-soaked streets, unsure of exactly what they would be coming back to. Others chose to stay behind, watching the water rise from their upper floors. The emotional weight of the moment was crushing. In some areas, the power started to flicker. Emergency sirens echoed through the narrow streets, while phones lit up with rapid-fire updates. Even in places where the water stopped just short of the front door, fear drove every decision. It was the unpredictability that kept the tension so high. How fast could the water rise? How long would the rain last? Later in the night, as the rainfall finally began to weaken, a slow sense of relief set in. In some neighborhoods, the water level stabilized and then started to recede, allowing some evacuated residents to return home in the early morning hours. The physical damage varied. Some came home to soaked living rooms, others just found streets filled with debris. But the psychological impact that lingered, this phase of the storm really revealed its human dimension. Beyond the infrastructure and the weather forecasts, extreme rainfall shatters our sense of safety and routine. It forces people to face uncertainty in real time, reminding us how quickly our familiar surroundings can become fragile the moment water finds a new path through the landscape. As the floodwaters spread and the ground became fully saturated, the weaknesses in the built environment became impossible to ignore. Roads that had handled years of traffic began to deform under the prolonged exposure to water. In several spots, the asphalt actually lifted and fractured, creating sudden hazards. Authorities had to shut down access routes immediately before accidents could happen. Underpasses and tunnels filled up rapidly, transforming them from thoroughfares into dangerous traps. Public facilities were closed as a precaution while inspection teams moved in. Sports centers, municipal buildings, and community spaces were all shut down so engineers could assess the electrical systems, structural integrity, and the extent of the water damage. These closures did more than just block traffic. They disrupted daily life well after the heaviest rain had tapered off. And then, severe thunderstorms rolled in, adding a whole new layer of danger to the mix. Lightning strikes sparked localized blackouts, cutting power to homes and public buildings right during the most critical hours of the storm. In one intense moment, a bolt actually struck a public safety facility directly. While the protective systems absorbed the worst of it, the surge was still strong enough to knock out the power supply and damage equipment nearby. Neighborhoods went dark as streetlights failed, making an already dangerous situation even harder for the emergency teams trying to navigate the flooded streets. Maintenance crews were out there all evening, fighting to restore essential services while contending with standing water and unstable ground. This stage of the event highlighted a serious issue we see time and time again. Our infrastructure is usually built for average weather, not for sudden, extreme stress like this. We avoided a total catastrophic collapse this time, but the storm showed us just how close these vital systems can come to failing. It is a stark reminder of how quickly a modern city can be compromised when the water pushes past the safety margins we depend on. With conditions getting worse by the hour, emergency management shifted gears. They stopped reacting to isolated incidents and moved into a posture of continuous all-hands-on-deck response. Police, firefighters, civil protection units, and municipal crews were all coordinating in real time. The priority was clear: focus on life safety and prevention, and worry about the cleanup later. The most urgent focus remained on the region's ravines and flood control channels, natural pathways that can turn into destructive torrents the moment rainfall intensifies. Throughout the day and into the evening, officials were glued to the water level monitors. Crews worked fast to reinforce temporary barriers and clear debris from critical drainage points, while contingency plans were drawn up in case floodgates needed to be adjusted. These were heavy decisions. They knew that protecting one area could inadvertently increase the pressure on another, requiring a delicate balancing act across the entire region. Public alerts kept coming through repeatedly, urging residents to avoid any unnecessary travel, stay far away from flooded roads, and follow official instructions to the letter. Authorities really emphasized that floodwater is deceptive. You often can't tell how deep or how fast it's moving, especially at night when visibility is low. Several roads were actually closed preemptively, not because they were already underwater, but because officials knew conditions could turn dangerous in a matter of minutes. By the time night fell, the intensity of the rain finally began to ease. Around the early evening, officials cautiously downgraded the highest level alerts, a signal that the immediate peak of the storm had passed. But that didn't mean everyone went home. Emergency crews remained deployed, conducting inspections and responding to isolated incidents well into the night. The response really underscored a critical principle of disaster management. Success is often measured not by what happens, but by what is prevented. Thanks to timely warnings, rapid coordination, and the fact that the public actually listened, they managed to reduce the likelihood of severe injuries or loss of life. Yet, even as the storm weakened, authorities made one point crystal clear. The situation was under control, but it was not over. Forecasts warned that the atmosphere was still unstable and could produce localized downpours, hail, and thunderstorms at any moment. Even moderate rainfall posed a serious threat because the waterways and drainage channels were already filled to capacity. On top of that, reduced visibility from fog added another layer of risk, especially for the early morning commute. Emergency officials stressed that recovery takes time and that rushing back to normal movement could actually create new emergencies. What became clear during this phase was the cumulative nature of the storm. This wasn't just a single moment of impact. It was a sequence of stresses unfolding over days. Each hour of rainfall, every road closure, and every delayed repair compounded the challenge of getting life back on track. The storm may have loosened its grip, but its influence was still felt everywhere. For many communities, the priority shifted from immediate survival to a slow, cautious recovery. Navigating the fragile balance between reopening and staying safe is difficult in a landscape still shaped by water. As communities slowly move toward recovery, officials are making one message unmistakably clear: the danger does not end just because the rain stops. The ground is damaged, the infrastructure is stressed, and the drainage channels remain unstable. That means even a light follow-up storm could trigger a renewed emergency. In the days ahead, the priority isn't relief, it is vigilance. What unfolded across eastern Spain wasn't just an isolated anomaly. It was a clear example of how short-duration, high-intensity rainfall can completely overwhelm modern systems with almost no warning. Streets didn't flood because rivers burst their banks. They flooded because the water arrived faster than the cities could move it away. The decisions made hours earlier, whether to close a road, issue an evacuation, or simply delay travel, proved decisive in preventing far worse outcomes. Emergency officials are emphasizing that preparedness is a shared responsibility. Authorities can monitor the ravines and deploy the crews, but individual choices matter just as much. Driving through standing water, ignoring alerts, or underestimating localized storms can quickly turn a manageable situation into a life-threatening one. Awareness, timing, and restraint are what save lives. Meteorologists continue to warn that events like this are becoming more common worldwide as weather patterns grow increasingly volatile. Regions that are unaccustomed to extreme rainfall are now facing conditions that were once considered rare. Adaptation through infrastructure upgrades, improved forecasting, and public education will be essential moving forward. For viewers following this report, staying informed is your first line of defense. If you liked the analysis in this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please share this video with your friends, family members, and relatives. And finally, if you found this report helpful, please hit the like button. This helps us beat the algorithm and ensures this truth reaches more people who need to hear it. Thank you for watching.